Hello, you join me in the well-heeled suburb of Fresno, perched high above Cape Town. It is a palm tree-lined maze of big, modern homes, the perfect natural habitat for a car like this. And even though I have a V12 under the bonnet, in GT mode, this car is subdued, almost civilized. But it has enough of a V12 burble to remind your neighbors that your car is better than theirs. What I'm driving is brand new, and it looks spectacular. It's the Aston Martin DB11. It's a very distinct feeling you get sitting in a car like this. There's a big engine up front resting under a long nose, which I literally can't see the end of. And it's sending all of its power to the rear wheels only. But it's very comfortable, very smooth, very much unlike a high-performance car actually. And the interior is what I would describe as sumptuous. The leatherwork is beautiful, and there's even such niceties as seat heaters and seat coolers, very much unlike a high-performance car. So Aston Martin call this a sports GT, but right now I'm not exactly sure what it is. It has the looks of a supercar, maybe even a hypercar. In fact, it looks like it was sent here from the future. But then, unlike a supercar, it has a very decent, usable boot, which a real-life businessman told me he could fit his golf clubs into. And that kind of makes it a grand tourer. But then it has this engine. Thanks to a partnership with Mercedes-Benz, Aston Martin will now source their V8s from Germany. But the 5.2-litre V12 in this DB11 is all British. It's designed and built in-house by Aston Martin, and it has simply astonishing levels of power. So let's go through some numbers quickly. Now, normally high-performance engines like this have a lot of power, but not that much torque. But thanks to twin turbocharging, not only does this engine produce 600 horsepower, but it also produces 700 Newton meters of torque. And that makes for a very different sort of performance. So, 0 to 100, 3.9 seconds. Top speed, 322 kilometers an hour. But those numbers don't tell you the full story. They don't tell you how this car punches out of corners. Those numbers don't tell you how unsettling this amount of power can be and how massive the wave of torque is that you can just ride. And as I flick up through the drive modes using this S button here on the steering wheel from GT to Sports Plus, the car gets noticeably sharper and more responsive. The engine gets noticeably louder, and all of it just assaults your senses. And even though this car is heavier than a Jaguar F-Type, it feels quite light on its feet. In fact, I'm a little bit scared of it, which makes me think this isn't a GT at all. It makes me think this is a sports car. Aston's new engine is interesting enough, but even the bonnet that covers it has a story to tell. This huge hood is made from one piece of aluminium, or aluminum if you want to mispronounce it, But the designers almost had to give up on this altogether because they simply couldn't find sheets of aluminium big enough to fit into the press. But they did, and here it is. And while we're here, let's just take a look at this engine. It's a good-looking engine. And it's hand-built, obviously. This one was made by Craig Elwell. Thanks, Craig. And it's a bit of a departure for the company because they've never made turbocharged engines before. But it wasn't all about brute power with the DB11. It's also about aerodynamics. And the company focused heavily on cheating the wind around and through the car. So if you look here, you find these special gills which vent air away from the wheel arch. That reduces the high pressure, which can create lift. And the air escapes underneath here along the side strake. And then if we move to the back of the car, air is forced into this vent built into the C-pillar. It then travels along a duct built into the car and then shoots out of the slot at the back here, reducing lift without the need for a spoiler. So the engineers get their downforce and the designers get the clean shape that they want. Everyone's happy. I'm still not sure what this car is. Aston have tried to blend all of the practical elements of a GT car. I mean, there are even ISOFIX child seat mounts in the back, with all the high performance elements of a supercar. And to a large degree, it's worked. I mean, sure, the handling isn't as sharp as something like a Ferrari 488, but all you can fit in a Ferrari 488 is yourself and maybe a light jacket. And maybe it's not as practical or as spacious as a similarly priced Bentley Continental GT, but it's infinitely more rewarding to drive and to look at and to listen to. So after 3 days with this car, I'm still not entirely sure what it's trying to be. Aston themselves call it a sports GT, so maybe they don't know either. But what I do know is that this is one of the most complete cars I've ever driven. It gets very close to giving you the best of all worlds. So I think we need a new name for this type of car. I think I'll call it the Super Sport Grand Tourer Luxury Performance Coupe. Or we could just call it a DB11.